Hello, we have Brad Phillips here, who is the Managing Director of the Beck Group. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your firm.
Well, as you said, I'm Brad Phillips, and I'm the Managing Director. And the Beck Group is an integrated enterprise, which means that we have development, architecture, and construction all in-house. And we've been very passionate about this BIM movement. We actually started developing our own software 14 years ago. And we also use the full suite of Revit products, which would be architecture, structure, MEP, 3D Studio Max, also the Viewer and Navisworks.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the Tuttle project.
Yes, the Tuttle project is very unique because it's a historic renovation of an annex to the Tuttle Courthouse, which is in downtown Atlanta. Okay. The interesting thing is these are buildings that were built in the 19th century or the early 1900s, and they have to be updated to the latest GSA codes, which is progressive collapse, which means they have to be able to withstand a terrace attack. So we had to exchange some wood frame timber structures for structural steel.
Wow.
So we had to go in and we used a animation of the workflow to convince the GSA that we knew how to do this. So we shored the building up, took out 2 floors of structure, put in structural steel, and put the building back down on top of it.
That's amazing. So what would have been like if BIM was not used?
Well,
Tuttle Courthouse?
As a firm, having done over 1,000 projects in BIM, we just couldn't imagine not using BIM on a project. It's really the central language that we use on our projects. It's the central database. We use it to convey all the information to our design consultants, to our subcontractors. It's just highly invaluable. In fact, the GSA project manager said there is no way this project would be on schedule or within budget without using BIM in an integrated firm like Beck.
How long have you been using BIM now?
Well, we started 14 years ago, and we've moved all of our projects to Revit in the last 3 years.
Wow. All right. So how has BIM leveraged across the project team?
Well, it was interesting. The GSA mandated it on this project. It was the first project that they had mandated BIM. And so as a firm that had been using it for many years, we decided that we were going to force that on all of our subconsultants as well as our subcontractors. And what was interesting is we actually pushed the limits of Revit at the time. We were using some beta versions. And we had to teach our subcontractors how to use Revit first. And then we had to train them on how to develop a model that then could be used later in the project. And one of the interesting things, we had a war room, much like this, where we had a big screen. We had the model projected up on the big screens, but yet we had folks working on their laptops on the sides, and we would coordinate the models in Navisworks. GSA was there live. We would make design revisions. We would export the data through Innovia into our database. We'd price it and come back and say, well, that design change cost this much. And so it was something that the GSA had never seen done before.
Did they readily embrace the change? Because it was a learning curve for them, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Well, Region 4, which is out of Atlanta, has been kind of the leader for GSA. And so they had really embraced it, and they were just delighted to see us take it to a level that they hadn't seen before.
That's great. So what were the benefits of leveraging BIM across the entire project team?
Yeah, well, probably the first thing is doing the animation of the workflow. In our interview, first off, gave the GSA confidence that we knew how to do such an integral project that had such a safety factor of taking the structure out of the building. And secondly, the GSA had mandated that, and so they were delighted that one of their requirements were met. But probably the interesting thing that BIM brings to us is that we're able to embed so much information in the project so much earlier that we really drive out some of the contingencies that normally would have been in a project. No question that if we wouldn't have used BIM, the initial price would have been much higher to the GSA. But because we were able to figure out how to do this project, we drove the contingencies out. Our subcontractors were much more efficient, so the price was less expensive, and that allowed the GSA to get more scope into the project than they normally would have.
That's great. So what is the future of BIM on government projects?
Well, what's interesting is it's being mandated, and it'll probably be mandated across all of the projects. And on this Tuttle project, one of our 40-year veteran superintendents, these guys typically don't use technology, they saw how cool the BIM model was and said, hey, I want one of those big monitors on my desk, and I want to be able to use the model. And that worked so well that he actually took it out to the project, and we used laptops in the field. So I think you'll see that on more projects. Also, the GSA wants to use these BIM models to do their lead energy analysis. Retrofitting these buildings will be, I think, the future instead of building greenfield.
Right.
And so the sustainability, we are able to use that in the design charrettes to figure out what was the most efficient way to reach the lead credits that they wanted. Also, at the end, we're giving them the BIM model back, and they will use it for their facilities management. So that's really the future, is having the model as the central database going forward to do all kinds of analysis and renovations far into the future.
That's great. So what would you say is the most exciting part of your job right now?
Well, we're finally seeing BIM come to fruition, and we've been on this trail for a long time, and the industry is really embracing it, and it takes progressive clients like GSA to mandate it to really make it go forward.
That's exciting. Well, thank you for taking the time to be with us.
You're welcome.
And thank you for joining us.